After striking up an unlikely friendship with a seemingly frail homeless man in Miami's dark and wild cityscapes, police officer David Yuzuk gradually realized this man was much more than he seemed. One day, the man declared, quote, "I think it's time for you to hear my story." The narrative he spun was nothing short of extraordinary. Battling Viet Cong fighters in the steaming jungles during the savage Tet Offensive, serving in the special forces against the Castro regime, and taking part in the dark, clandestine operations of the CIA. It seemed far-fetched. The man sitting across from Yuzuk stood just 4 feet 9 inches tall, hardly the profile of a special forces warrior. Yet, Richard J. Flaherty insisted, quote, "I was the smallest man to ever serve in the military. I went to Vietnam with the Army's 101st Airborne, and then Special Forces School." Skepticism gnawed at Yuzuk. Perhaps these stories were just the man's way of armoring against a world that had cast him aside. Nevertheless, the tale lingered in his mind. Driven by curiosity, Yuzuk contacted the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, only to reel in shock when they confirmed Flaherty's role in numerous high-stakes operations. But just as the layers began to peel back on one of the most staggering stories of modern warfare, it came crashing down. Only 6 hours after his call, Flaherty lost his life in a mysterious hit-and-run. The sinister timing hinted at a desperate move to silence a man with too many secrets. Driven by a profound need to honor Flaherty's enigmatic legacy, Yuzuk launched into a dogged quest to unearth the full scale of Captain Richard J. Flaherty's covert life. Soon, Yuzuk would grasp the total weight of the adage, "It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." This small man's colossal deeds were about to come to light. The moment Officer David Yuzuk received word of the accident, he raced to the scene, his heart hammering with dread. But it was too late. The quiet street bore no trace of the chaos that had claimed his friend's life. Eerily deserted, with no witnesses and no clues to the hit-and-run that had ended Richard J. Flaherty's existence. Yet, in the aftermath, as Flaherty's sole confidant, Yuzuk was granted custody of a box filled with Flaherty's personal possessions. Contained within this unassuming box were hundreds of documents, yellowed newspaper clippings, and weathered mementos, each a testament to Flaherty's extraordinary military service. As Yuzuk sifted through the relics of a storied past, he found himself piecing together the incredible exploits of the smallest man ever to serve in the military. All the while, Flaherty's final whispered warning echoed hauntingly in his ears, quote, "Don't reach out to anyone about this. It would be bad for your career and dangerous for my health." Yuzuk felt a compelling duty to illuminate the hidden depths of Flaherty's life. There were forces at work intent on keeping Flaherty's story buried, but Yuzuk was driven by a profound responsibility to honor and redeem the life of a man whom the world had overlooked and forgotten. Through the documents and the contacts of old friends and family Yuzuk managed to attain, the officer realized that even from childhood, Flaherty had no other choice but to become a defiant and aggressive force of nature before a world that considered him too small to do anything significant. Though Richard Flaherty was an entirely able-bodied individual, he was often perceived as disabled from a young age due to his stature. A family member recalled, quote, "People stared at him when he walked through the door. That's why he had to prove he was strong." Leveraging his strength and charisma to counterbalance the perceived weakness his height suggested, Flaherty became a standout athlete in high school. He compensated for his small frame with a stellar academic performance, wit, and likability. His school yearbook captured his essence with the title, quote, "Richard Flaherty, the Giant Killer." Flaherty harbored a lifelong ambition to serve in the military, fully aware that his height posed a significant barrier. The armed forces typically rejected anyone under 5 feet tall. But Flaherty was not one to let a mere 3 inches thwart his dreams. He embarked on a relentless campaign, penning letters to the United States Congress, urging them to advocate on his behalf. After years of persistence, he secured a special congressional waiver, enabling him to enlist in the Army. However, another hurdle emerged. He was too light to meet the weight requirement. Undeterred, Flaherty spent months weightlifting, eventually gaining enough mass to qualify for service. Officially the smallest person in the U.S. military, Flaherty was lauded by his superiors for his tenacity and desire to serve, though many doubted his suitability for combat. Yet, Flaherty demanded no concessions. He was tenacious, agile, and highly resilient, capable of withstanding immense physical challenges. Throughout boot camp, he never once voiced a complaint about his physical limitations. Despite the extra effort required, he successfully completed every test and drill alongside his fellow recruits. As he trained to become a paratrooper, Flaherty consistently volunteered to jump first. Occasionally, additional weights were strapped to him to ensure his descent matched the necessary speed and to prevent him from being swept away by the wind. In an elite group where thousands of taller men failed to secure a place each year, Flaherty not only succeeded, but thrived, ultimately securing his spot in the prestigious 101st Airborne Division. His tenacity and grit soon led him to the jungles of Vietnam, ready to prove his mettle on a larger stage. In the spring of 1968, U.S. soldiers in Vietnam encountered the full ferocity and cunning of their enemy as the Viet Cong launched the Tet Offensive, sweeping through the war-ravaged nation. Carl Kane, freshly arrived in Vietnam, vividly remembers the first time he and his fellow soldiers laid eyes on Richard Flaherty. Their initial reaction was laughter, dismissing him as a morale-boosting jest amid the chaos. However, the humor quickly faded when they learned Flaherty was to be their platoon leader. Commanding with a potent, resonant voice that cut through the jungle's din, Flaherty exuded an air of unassailable confidence and a hint of arrogance, compelling his men to respect and follow his lead without question. As they navigated the sweltering jungles during the peak of the Tet Offensive, Flaherty's lifelong cultivation of a fearless demeanor reached terrifying new heights, unnerving even his battle-hardened comrades. Flaherty was relentless and indomitable in combat, charging headfirst as bullets sliced through the dense foliage. Despite multiple wounds, he insisted on returning to the fight as soon as he was physically able. Driven by a relentless spirit that sometimes bordered on the ruthless, his men had to restrain him at least once from executing wounded Viet Cong fighters. However, Flaherty's fierce nature also translated into remarkable leadership. The tension was palpable as his platoon advanced through the jungle in an arrowhead formation. Point man Mike Nunez, drenched in sweat, maintained a vigilant watch, scanning every inch of the dense underbrush. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered by the deafening roar of AK-47s and the menacing whir of rocket-propelled grenades. An RPG round exploded against a nearby tree, instantly shredding Nunez. They had stumbled upon a well-concealed enemy bunker. Without hesitation, Flaherty dashed westward, drawing all enemy fire toward him. Bullets tore through the earth near his swiftly moving feet. One struck the heel of his boot, toppling him. Undeterred, Flaherty quickly regained his footing, limping the final yards to the tree line. Wiping the dust and debris from his reddened eyes, he limped from spot to spot, barking orders for his men to set up defensive positions, just as hundreds of enemy troops surged toward them. Surrounded by a superior force of North Vietnamese Army soldiers, they were cut off. Back at camp, U.S. commanders frantically barked orders into radios, trying to break the encirclement to no avail. As dusk fell, the hope of immediate rescue faded. The night descended into a feverish nightmare of smoke, gunfire, and desperate cries. Isolated and besieged, Flaherty and his men faced overwhelming odds. Yet, despite being wounded, outnumbered, and outgunned, Flaherty's command remained unwavering. He orchestrated a fierce defense, meeting each enemy charge with relentless counterfire. By the break of dawn, the battlefield had transformed. The smoke lifted to reveal Flaherty and his men standing victorious amid nearly 100 fallen enemy combatants, having sustained remarkably few losses themselves. For his fearless command and exceptional bravery under fire, Flaherty was awarded the Silver Star for his indomitable spirit and leadership in the face of dire adversity. Back in the States, Flaherty struggled to grasp the civilian life that eluded him. Haunted by his past and reeling from the devastating loss of his girlfriend in a tragic accident, he roamed the shadowy, crime-infested streets of Miami, much like he had stalked the jungles of Vietnam. Violence was all he knew, shaping him into an aggressive and unpredictable man, a skilled gun runner and dealer. With his thirst for action unquenched, Flaherty soon found himself back in the grips of the American military machine. He re-enlisted as a captain with the Green Berets, plunging him into the treacherous world of espionage and special ops, with missions that will remain shrouded in secrecy for years, maybe forever. Rumors swirl about Flaherty's tenure as a covert operative. Some say he masterminded a gun-running operation and led a band of anti-Castro Cuban militants from the murky depths of a Florida swamp. Likely tangled in CIA initiatives aimed at stifling the spread of communism in the Americas and readying troops for potential skirmishes with the Cuban government, Flaherty's bold, fearless nature and murky morals, paired with top-notch training, made him an ideal secret agent. However, working against both secret government agencies and local law enforcement proved perilous. By the mid-1980s, he faced arrest for allegedly selling military gear to civilian militias. His covert career seemed finished when this landed him in prison, but a turn of fate came when an agent from the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, recognizing Flaherty's undercover value, secured his release. However, he didn't leave jail for free. Flaherty joined the ATF, diving deep undercover to infiltrate drug cartels and criminal rings, aiming to topple their leaders. While many of Flaherty's high-stakes operations remained classified, explosive allegations soon linked him and a team of former military men to significant arms and explosives trafficking to Nicaraguan militants opposing the Sandinista regime. After a blistering high-speed chase through Nicaragua's humid jungles, Flaherty narrowly escaped capture, though the operation crumbled when 2 of his team were taken by government forces. Following that narrow escape, Flaherty stepped away from the covert world, settling into what appeared to be a quiet role at the United States Postal Service. But once again, peace proved fleeting. By the mid-1990s, Richard Flaherty's past began to haunt him with increasing ferocity. The ruthless acts he had witnessed and committed during his military and covert operations careers began to extract a heavy emotional toll. Ultimately, he left his job at the post office and found himself living on the streets of Miami, a stark contrast to his once disciplined military life. Neighbors often saw Flaherty at night, sitting beneath a tree, clutching his face and screaming in utter despair. Plagued by insomnia, he was constantly vigilant, his unpredictable behavior and profound misery a reflection of the inner demons that were tearing him apart. The strength he had relied on all his life was now unraveling before him. Those few who remained close to him recalled his torment over a specific incident during the Vietnam War, when he ordered his men to take down a fellow American soldier who ran toward the Viet Cong waving a white flag. This memory gnawed at him relentlessly. His family attempted to intervene, even providing him with an apartment in hopes of stabilizing his life. However, Flaherty could not remain stationary. He sold the property and returned to the streets, driven by a growing wildness and paranoia. He claimed that government agents frequently assaulted him, a claim that could never be confirmed or denied. Still, having been deeply involved in numerous CIA and ATF covert operations, many skirting the edges of federal and international law and blatantly aimed at overthrowing foreign governments, it was no surprise that these agencies would want to keep a tight rein on him, or even take him out if the situation escalated. Flaherty adamantly refused to seek shelter or accept government aid, choosing instead to isolate himself under a tree with a book, battling his wartime nightmares alone. Feeling betrayed by the US Army and the government, he deliberately chose a life as a drifter. He lived in solitude for over 3 decades, only occasionally revealing fragments of his turbulent past to those who extended him kindness. This pattern persisted until he encountered police officer David Yuzuk, a man who would eventually earn his trust and friendship. Over time, feeling a sense of security with Yuzuk, Flaherty began to share his story, unraveling the chain of events that led to the creation of his biography, The Giant Killer, the true story of the smallest U.S. soldier, Green Beret Captain Richard Flaherty. Through this book, his sacrifices and legacy were finally acknowledged and honored, offering him a semblance of redemption. Even 9 years after the mysterious and suspicious circumstances surrounding Flaherty's demise, the driver involved in the hit-and-run has yet to be found or identified. The case remains unsolved, with local authorities keeping tight-lipped about any progress in the investigation. This silence only adds to the intrigue surrounding Flaherty's story and lends weight to his foreboding warning that uncovering the truth would be dangerous to his health.